Joey always told me, laughing as though it were actually a joke, that he wanted to kill himself, but it was never the right time. There were always groceries to be bought and little brothers to be tucked in at night. Don't worry, Joey isn't going to kill himself 20 more seconds into this poem. It's not the kind of story.
Yeah. I I think that this is a big thing that needs more attention, which is people saying, just kidding. I think people say this sort of stuff all the time. They will say, really, really awful, self deprecating things as jokes, or they'll say, I want to kill myself as a joke. And I think that it takes a toll. And I do think there is value if you are constantly saying mean things to yourself or constantly, saying that you want to take your own life, whatever the case. There's value in looking at what is making you say those things.
I'm telling here. Joey got a promotion, and now he can afford antidepressants. Joey is Joe now. Joe is a cold engine in which none of the parts complain. Joe is a brain.
Oh no. Oh no. Okay, so real quick. This is a topic that I think is really, really important. And I am afraid to talk about it because I have talked about antidepressants before. And I posted a TikTok, and the translation that people on TikTok got from what I said was antidepressants are bad and wrong. And so I got reamed on TikTok about how, I should stop shaming people for antidepressants, which is not what I was saying at all. I think that medication can be life-saving. I think that medication can be extremely important. I think that the danger with antidepressants is when they are used as the solution to the problem. When you take antidepressants and you say, great, I feel all better now, and don't do anything else, I think that can cause problems. Because a lot of people will talk about how, there's a chemical imbalance in my brain, which is what they used to think caused things like depression and anxiety. They have recently discovered that idea is actually looking like it's not true. It's looking like that idea is false. It's not based on good science. And so instead, what they are discovering antidepressants seem to actually do is they seem to actually just numb you out. For instance, if you take antidepressants and you mash them up into a paste and you rub them on your gums, it will numb your gums. And the thing about numbing is that when it comes to your emotions, you can't numb selectively. So when you numb your emotions, you numb all of them. So I have done work with people. This is fascinating. I have done work with people where we were trying to get access to some, deeper emotional problem that they were facing. And they couldn't access it. I will often use visualization in my work that I do with people. And so we were visualizing them like going into this room. And what was fascinating was that while they were on antidepressants, the room was just this like black, foggy place. And what's really, really interesting is when they got off of the antidepressants, they were able to see in the room. Where I think antidepressants are hugely useful is if you are in so much pain that you can't even do the work that is necessary in order to heal. Antidepressants can be a lifesaver because all of a sudden, if you numb out the pain that is in your hip so that you can last until you get the hip surgery, that's great. Please, by all means, do that. Take the Advil, But if you are taking antidepressants as a full-on solution to the problem, what ends up happening, when I got reamed on TikTok, there was one woman who responded, and she actually gave this really nice analogy to describe it. She said it's sort of like if you were in a cave, and you were trying to make your way out of the cave. Antidepressants can sort of be like a fire that gives you some light and keeps you warm in the cave. But the problem is if you sit down and just keep yourself warm by that fire and do nothing else, you're never going to get out of the cave. And so it's really, really important that if you do decide to partake in antidepressants, which again, I think can be a wonderful decision, very necessary decision a lot of times. If you are going to participate, it's very important that it is coupled, and the science, the research shows this as well, that it is coupled with work, that it is coupled with talking with someone, working things out, whatever therapeutic modality works for you. It doesn't have to be therapy. It could be coaching, could be therapy. It could be like religious practice. There's all sorts common factors research shows us that it doesn't have to be therapy to be therapeutic. So there's all sorts of different ways, but just make sure that it is coupled with something that is helping you to actually get you out of the cave. Okay, keep going.
Someone made out of fossils. If you removed money from the equation, Joey would have been painting elk on cave walls. People would have fed him and kept him away from high places because, goddamn, look at those elk. I think the genes for being an artist and mentally ill aren't just related. They're the same gene, but...
The gene for being an artist and being mentally ill aren't just related, they're the same gene. I don't agree. I don't agree. Yes. Tortured artist, for sure. That is a trope, that is a thing. However, that being said, I think that artists, at their core, what artists do is that in one way or another, they examine the human condition. And I think that people who are mentally ill often are more incentivized to examine the human condition because they are suffering so much. When you are, happy-go-lucky and everything is fine and dandy, you can sort of ignore that stuff. When you are really suffering, I think it often draws us to examining the human condition. To me, the human condition is the common element. Okay, let's keep going.
Try telling that to a bill collector. We were 17, and I drove us all to punk shows in a station wagon older than any of us. We were 17, and I bought lunch for Joey more often than I didn't. We were 17, and the one time Joey tried to talk to me about being depressed when someone else was around, I told him to shut the hell up and asked if he needed to change his tampon. You know that moment?
Really interesting. I have two different thoughts here, which is one, I think that we don't know how to support one another. I've talked to so many men that when they go and try to get support from their friends, what they get in response is, that sucks, bro, and nothing else. I don't think that the men are doing it, the male friends are doing it because they, don't want to help their friend. I think that they don't know how. And I think it is part of the gender healing that us men are going through is raising our emotional intelligence, figuring out how to support one another on an emotional basis. Because for so long we've been told that we're not allowed to feel our emotions. The other half of this is oftentimes people simply do not have the capacity to be able to support others when they are going through really tough stuff. I think that there's a misconception that in prioritizing yourself, it is selfish. And I've even heard, really smart people that I respect and admire say, yes, it is selfish, and that's okay. And I actually disagree. I think that in prioritizing yourself, you inevitably end up helping others in the process. This is what I see in the work that I do with people, which is that as they work on themselves, as they heal, what ends up happening is that there is an inevitable expansion of that healing that goes outside of them. Because as they heal, they inevitably start to influence those around them and help those around them. And so the more that you prioritize your own needs and what it is that you need in any given situation, the more that you are able to help others. I think that a response like that one, like shut the hell up, when somebody reaches out for support, I think that the only reason that a response like that comes up is because they are so overburdened. They have been not prioritizing themselves for so long that they have to be abrasive about it in order to get the message across. This is something that I see a lot with people that are learning to stand up for themselves for the first time in their lives, where they are standing up for themselves in a way that it's clunky, it's awkward, it's not well refined because it's a brand new skill. So of course they're gonna suck at it. And that's okay. It is part of the process. And it also doesn't mean that, we have to accept that behavior. We can understand where the behavior is coming from and not accept it. We can validate the emotional experience that it's like, oh yeah, of course, this person has never stood up for themselves. And so there's a lot of rage when they do stand up for themselves because that's the only way that they know how to do it. And we can still say, hey, it's not okay to treat me that way.
When the cartoon realizes he's taken 3 steps off the cliff, and he takes a long look at the audience like we're holding the last moving box in a half-empty house. Joey looked like that without a puff of smoke. He just played video games for a half hour and then went home. I once caught Joey in my dad's office, staring at the safe where he knew we kept the guns. Once, Joey molded his car into the shape of a tree trunk and refused to give a reason why. I once caught Joey in biology class, staring at his scalpel like he wanted to beat a frog, splayed out, wide open, so honest. There's one difference between me and Joey. When we got arrested, bail money was waiting for me at the station. When I was hungry, I ate. When I wanted to open myself up and see if there really were bees rattling around in there, my parents got me a therapist. I can pinpoint the session that brought me back to the world. That session cost $75. $75 is 2 weeks of groceries. It's a month of bus fares, not even a school year's worth of new shoes. It took weeks of $75 to get...
Yeah, this is something that I struggle with a lot, which is that I don't think that mental health should be paywalled. And at the same time, the people that do the work to provide mental health care have to make a living. And it is a big reason why I continue to make these resources. I did a video recently, it'll pop up here. Did a video recently about being a hermit in a hut and, if I wanted to continue to make content. And I think that one of the reasons that I do is because I want people that, have to spend the $75 on groceries and can't afford to spend it on coaching or therapy or whatever, that they have some sort of recourse. They have some place that they can go. I think that there's a lot of bad stuff out there, even when it is well intended, a lot of stuff that doesn't actually help people and ends up hurting more than helping. And so I think that the more that we can put out the good stuff into the world, it drowns out the bad.
To the one that saved my life. We both had parents that believed us when we said we weren't okay, but mine could afford to do something about it. I wonder how many kids like Joey wanted to die and were unlucky enough to actually pull it off. How many kids and people who cared about them but also had to pay rent. I'm so lucky that right now I'm not describing Joey's funeral.
I do also think that business and financial literacy are such important skills to have in the world that we live in. Like, sure, you can make whatever judgment you want about it's not right, it shouldn't be that way, etc. And in the world that we live in, it is very, very important that we have an understanding of how money works, how to make money, etc. And I think that there are a lot of perspectives, concepts that are perpetuated as the advice, the right thing to do financially, that are actually really brain dead and actually keep people poor. And so I've again, it'll pop up here. I've made a video about some of these beliefs that I think really hold people back.
I'm so lucky we all lived through who we were to become who we are. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky.
Cool. I wonder how he's doing. I wonder how he's doing. Because it sounds like he has gotten help, which is wonderful. And it sounds like his art is a huge way that he expresses himself. But God, do I feel a lot of pain in that man. Okay. Thanks for watching, y'all. I hope that, some of the stuff throughout this was useful, helpful. If you're curious about this, antidepressant conversation that I was talking about, and sort of the ways that I see people, get help from their depression, stuff like that. This video that'll either pop up here or down in the description, depending on where you're watching this, goes into detail about a lot of that stuff. It's actually where the clip that got, roasted came from. So if you're interested, check that out, and I'll see you next time. Bye.